Welcome to the IDP Blitz Week 8. We're going to get into some changing linebacker situations with Matt Schauf. Matt, let's start in Cleveland. It might not have been the plan, but here we are. Deion Jones is going to take the green dot.
Sig, I know you always try to chill me out with that intro music for the stream, but it's not going to work because I've already posted stuff today. I've already exercised, I showered, I trimmed my face, everything. So I'm ready to go. And so is Deion Jones. Before last week's game, linebackers coach Jason Tarver said that he expected Deion Jones to take over play calling soon. And Jacob Phillips was not playing particularly well, but he was playing a lot. He was calling the plays. He was getting tackles. Then he tore a pectoral muscle on Sunday and accelerated whatever the timeline was for Deion Jones. If you look at the playing time afterward for Jones and Jacob Phillips, it matched up exactly. The amount of time that Phillips missed in that game was what Jones played. I would expect him to be the full-timer going forward because, like I said, that's what they were planning for. He should be calling the plays. He should be on the field, so that should mean tackles. Last week, the playing time, in that game that was altered by the Phillips injury, it wound up with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah playing 80% to lead the linebackers, and then Sione Takitaki playing 56%. So I don't know what to expect from JOK going forward. His playing time came down recently, so something that he's doing isn't enough for them. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but I would bet on Deion Jones being the full-timer. Then we'll see about JOK, and I would think that Takitaki sinks further now, although he's been playing decently so far.
Yeah, always in motion here. Monday night against Cincinnati, we'll watch Cleveland try to corral that amazing Cincinnati offense. I really wanted to leave Troy Anderson in my lineup last week, but I knew it wasn't wise because Michael Walker was back. So what went down? Could we put Troy Anderson back in our lineup soon? What do we see in the future here?
Well, let's start with the glass a third of the way full view for Troy Anderson. He played less. He obviously wasn't starting. Michael Walker got back to full playing time, and Rashaan Evans was still playing full time. Troy Anderson played 41% of the snaps, which is obviously not enough for us to keep him in IDP lineups, but it is more than he was playing at any point before Michael Walker got hurt. So I don't really know what the takeaway is from that, other than that the Falcons probably spent more time with three linebackers on the field last week than they probably should have in getting beaten down by the Bengals. I don't know what it means for Troy Anderson going forward. We had Arthur Smith say last week before Michael Walker played, he said something along the lines of, we want to get good players out there, or we want to get guys on the field who are going to help us. And we've seen them do things this year. Well, they take out somebody for a chunk of time in one game and put in somebody else, and then the next week it's back the other way again. So we'll see what they think they need from Troy Anderson. We'll see what they think of Michael Walker and Rashaan Evans. But for now, I'm going to move forward expecting it to be Walker and Evans, and then Anderson playing sparingly.
Yeah. Well, we know this. When Troy Anderson gets a full-time role, he is going to be a handful in IDP leagues. We thought Frankie Luvu was going to be a handful. Then he got hurt. Now what do we have for Carolina going up against Atlanta this week?
Yeah, he returned last week from this past week from 2 weeks off with a shoulder injury, and he played as few as snaps of the season. He hadn't gone below 85% in any of the first 4 games, and that low point was back in week 1 where he was a brand new starter. So it had climbed from there. He was the Panthers linebacker playing the most until his return game last week, where he only played 66%. Shaq Thompson trailed Frankie Luvu for the first 4 games in playing time. All 4 of those games he trailed him. Then he played 100% in each of the 2 games Luvu missed. Still played 100% last week ahead of Frankie Luvu. So we'll have to see. Now, I reached out to Jared Feinberg on Twitter, who is a Panthers guy, among other things, NFL draft guy as well. He was kind of opining that maybe it was bringing Luvu back a little bit shortly, like easing him back in from the shoulder injury and not overdoing it. Maybe the fact that they were surprisingly ahead of the Bucs contributed to that, like easing back in where they didn't need him as much. So I don't know. We'll see. I haven't seen any report of him tweaking that shoulder. I'm not sure that it's something we have to worry about going forward. I would plan to play Mr. Luvu this week, and then we'll see if that becomes a trend. It helps that this week they're playing the Falcons, who just throw a whole bunch of tackle opportunities right in your face.
Yeah, at the line of scrimmage. We thought we were loving Quincy Williams being back. We are loving the Jets' upstart story, the defense. But what about this ever-changing linebacker situation?
This is another, I don't know. And I mean, that's the thing with IDP is if we had a wide receiver situation where suddenly one of the starters played half of the next game and somebody else played more than him, we'd have reports from all the national guys on why this happened, not to mention all of the beat guys for that team. I haven't seen anything about why Quincy Williams suddenly went from full-timer to 52% snap share last week. Quan Alexander played 65% in that game. It was Quincy Williams starting the game, so I don't believe that Quan Alexander has replaced him. I haven't seen anything specific on the injury front. Williams is, not that far removed from the ankle injury that cost him a couple games. He was limited in practice today. He spent last week limited, and then full on Friday. So, maybe he tweaked it at some point during the game. I haven't seen any mention of that at all. I checked around, so maybe that was the case, but I don't know that yet. Otherwise, we're kind of watching. And if I don't hear anything, any reason why, or like any plan going forward, I'm going to have to knock Quincy Williams down the week 8 rankings and try not to use him this week, just in case he's only a halftime player.
Yeah. The IDP reporting gap is something that I suppose is reflected throughout fantasy football and throughout the football world, but that's why we have so many great minds on the IDP side, and that's why it's easier to get an edge. It's why you're watching the show. It's why you subscribe to Draft Sharks, Footballguys, and all these other great places with great IDP coverage. Also, these places might be talking about Cody Barton in Seattle. We've been waiting a while for his chance at the end of his rookie contract to show what he can do. What kind of chance is he getting?
Opened the season as a full-timer, looked like a guy we could count on for tackles, but that quickly changed because he was not playing well. The snaps fell to 62% in week 4. They've bounced around since then. They might be settling into a range for expectation going forward. So I mentioned 62% in week 4, went to 77 the following week, then down to 39, then back up to 63 last week. So I'm going to go forward assuming that it's like in the 60 to 70 range. We'll see if it drops below there, but Seattle in recent games has been leaning much more on nickel and dime packages. They've also been playing better on defense. So I would expect that continues, that we get less playing time for Cody Barton, that we get more playing time for members of the secondary. So we're not using Cody Barton if you can help it, especially in, normal to average sized IDP leagues. Ryan Neal, though, is somebody to be aware of if you weren't already. He took over for Josh Jones in that Jamal Adams void a couple weeks ago. And slot corner Kobe Bryant is also worth a look in deep leagues. He's played 75% or more of the snaps in 3 of the past 4 games, had 6+ total tackles in each of those 3 games. So I would expect that he'll be in that range going forward.
Yeah, the Seattle first 5 picks, they're starting left tackle and right tackle. They're starting outside corner, starting slot corner. Oh, and Kenneth Walker. He's pretty good. I don't know if I'd rather have to tackle Kenneth Walker or Derrick Henry. This week, Christian Harris is going to have to tackle Derrick Henry, probably a lot. Is it enough to consider him in our IDP lineups?
All I know is I don't want to go on a plane ride with Russell Wilson where he's going to be doing lunges and high knees while I'm trying to sleep. Christian Harris made his debut as the number 2 linebacker in playing time for the Texans last week. Opened the season on IR, missed the first 4 games, came back just in time for the bye. And then coming out of the bye, he played 68% of the snaps behind Christian Kirksey. Kirksey is the only full-timer at linebacker for the Texans last week against the Raiders. So 68% for Harris, not a level at which we're using him in most cases, but it shows that the team is ready for somebody other than Camus Grugier-Hill to be in there. He dropped all the way down to a tie for 3rd at the position with Garrett Wallow in that game. So Grugier-Hill's gone, dump him from rosters. Harris, a guy you can stash in deep leagues, certainly a guy who should be stashed at this point in dynasty leagues where he might have been available already. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets up close to Kirksey's playing time this season.
You maybe should have been stashing Willie Gay Jr. through his suspension. We did see him return from the suspension last week. Kansas City on bye this week. Did we see enough from him to carry him through the bye in week 7?
Not in that one. 56% playing time in his return game, and we don't know yet what his role is going to be. First 2 games this year, 65%, 92%. Then he had the 4-game suspension for a previous arrest. So we're waiting to see that settle out. What we do know is in recent years, we have not been able to count on multiple Chiefs linebackers getting that level of playing time, the high enough level where they're going to give us consistent numbers and be usable. A lot of seasons, a lot of games, a lot of weeks recently, we haven't been able to count on one even. So we do at least have Nick Bolton. He's the guy to count on. Willie Gay Jr. We'll see going forward. Kind of an erratic profile in general. So I'm going to need to see it for sure before I'm trusting him.
Yeah, and I think it depends on your scoring system. In big play leagues, I think you got to hang on to Willie just because that's his calling card. And even in the smaller number of snaps, in this offense, setting up play, come from behind, play from ahead, game scripts for them, come from behind for the opponent, Willie Gay is going to get chances to make plays. We're talking about Frankie Luvu, and I don't care if that's how you're supposed to say his name. It's like Heinz Field. I'm going to keep saying Heinz Field. Let's talk about your boo. Malcolm Rodriguez coming out of the bye. Teams make adjustments. We're always watching that, especially on the IDP side. Maybe we don't get reporting, Matt, but we do get results out of the bye that give us some idea of what teams were thinking. What were the Lions thinking about your boo?
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about the high points, the steps up the ladder, we got to talk about the week where it came back down. He had climbed in playing time incrementally every single week since the opener. Last week down to 73%. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm not going to take one game and say they decided that Malcolm Rodriguez was on the field too much. We'll see what they do this week. He's still in the range where if it's a deep league, he can be used as an LB3, but I would try to lean away from using him while we see what the playing time is going to look like. At the very least, he's certainly not ready to pass Alex Anzalone yet as the top usable Lions linebacker.
One last note, not 100% linebackers, but we'll talk a little bit of injuries here. If you were watching the Ravens and Browns last week, Geno Stone was showing up all over the place. And for the Bengals, there was a time that we had Jermaine Pratt slated to be a full-time player. What's our latest playing time report and outlook for this week for those guys?
Yeah, and injuries have helped both of these guys out in recent weeks. You mentioned Geno Stone. He stepped in fully for Marcus Williams last week. It was the second game since Marcus Williams went on IR. The first game, he was the leader among those second safeties next to Chuck Clark, but they kind of spread it around. I believe Stone was at 75% playing time for that one. So it's good for our planning purposes to see Geno Stone get up to 100% this past week, especially because we have the Bucs this week that should be plenty of opportunities coming in this game for those Baltimore safeties. So I like Geno Stone this week and for the foreseeable future. And then Jermaine Pratt up to full playing time last week as well, 98% in that first game after Logan Wilson's shoulder injury, which you hate to see because he just had surgery on it. Doesn't sound like they're expecting him to be out for a long time, but it's one of those where the window is 2 to 5 weeks. So he could be back soon, could be out into late November or whatever. We'll see. Until he's back, Jermaine Pratt looks like a full-timer. Akeem Davis-Gaither outproduced Pratt 9-6 in tackles last week, but he played 68% versus 98% for Pratt. So I'm going to bet on Pratt over ADG. He's okay for deep leagues, especially last week, though, was the Atlanta matchup that we already alluded to before. So last week was Bengals against the Falcons, not this week. So last week was Bengals against the Falcons. They had lots of tackle opportunities against that run-heavy team. Could get that this week as well against the Browns. So again, deep leagues, you can use Akeem Davis-Gaither this week, but Pratt's the top bet among Bengals linebackers.
IDP Blitz is your top bet to get a lot of very useful information to help you win in your IDP league. We're here every Wednesday afternoon with really a murderer's row of IDP minds. The guru, John Norton, Matt Schauf. Again, you find him at SCHAUFDS, DS for Draft Sharks. And next week, the Godfather returns, Gary Davenport at IDP Sharks. I'm at Sigmund Bloom. We're at Footballguys, and we want to help you win. And we like hanging out with you. We appreciate that you hang out with us. You're the best to hang out with because you're so classy.